Guys, so I know I promised you a bat researcher today. It did not happen. We had to reschedule for next week, but we're going to be doing that next week. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a volunteer opportunity that I've been doing that I think may be of interest to some of you. And that is called Skype a Scientist. So this was actually started by a researcher who's really active on Twitter. And what it is, it's a website that you can go and log in as either a teacher or a scientist and fill out a profile. So by filling out a profile, I've only done that as a scientist, but basically you fill out your field. There's several options to pick from, what kind of class you'd be interested in speaking to. So if you have like a grade preference, when is your availability, and then other traits as well that might help you match to a class. So like I've said before on the channel, that representation is extremely important. Being able to show people that someone like them can succeed in the sciences. So you can put down things like first gen, which means that your parents were immigrants, or a parent was an immigrant, which I am, or like different types of diversity that you can put down, and then you sign up, and they match you. I think you can request up to 5 classes at a time, and this doesn't all have to be like at the same time. You schedule with teachers. So I think the max is 5 and the minimum is 2. I'm pretty sure. It might be 1, but I think it's 2. And then you sign up, and they match you with teachers. And usually the teachers are the ones who reach out to you, although if you don't hear from them, you have information that you can then kind of reach out to them and make sure you connect. The system is also really great that if you forget, it will be like, you have unconfirmed matches, and then it gets you to make sure that you make those connections. So the teachers usually reach out to you, and then you plan availability. And what I also like to do is I usually send a paragraph about what my skill set is, what my background is, what I do, what I've done in the past. So kids can, come up with questions about, what you do ahead of time, which is really cool, because a lot of the time when you sit down with a class, they have specific questions that they want answered. So it gives them a little bit more information before you, show up and speak to the class. And then once you set a time, you Skype in at that time. And I've only set up during like lunch hours, during the weekdays, because it's during a weekday most likely. So you sit down I usually do it at lunch, and Skype in. And these are, teachers and classes from all over the states. I've done one in Minnesota, one in Chicago, one in Boston. And I'm doing another one, I think, in Chicago next week. So they're from all over. And a lot of the time, they're from underrepresented or underprivileged schools that might not have as much access to scientists coming in, which I think is really cool. And then you sit down and Skype in, and the kids can come up and ask you questions, and you have a conversation. The session is moderated by the teacher. So, and it's pretty fun because you get like some really deep questions. So one of the best questions I got from my last class, which was a 3rd grade class, was, what does science mean to you? Which is like an incredibly deep question from like a 9-year-old. But essentially, I answered that, or like they said, like, how do you become a scientist? And I answered that, you train. You can train to be a scientist. When you're in undergraduate or, in graduate school, you pick up certain skills that you need to become a scientist in whatever branch of science that you're interested in. But also that science isn't just a field of study or an umbrella of a field of study. It's a way of looking at the world. So if you're curious about a question, say it's a question about nature, you want to know why something happens, and then say that, sorry, my dog's nails are clicking, and then say that you have that question, and then you go through methodical way of figuring out the answer to that question. That's a scientific method, right? So I think it's really important for kids to understand that they can do science now. Like, there's nothing stopping them from doing it now, even when they're little, from learning all those basic building blocks of what science is and looking at the world in a scientific way. And in the end, science isn't just like memorizing facts and figures and being able to spout out different equations and things like that. It's about being able to solve problems. It's problem solving, especially novel problem solving. It's looking at something that's never been solved or building off a question that has been that you still don't fully understand and being able to come up with something that has never existed before, which I think is like one of the really cool things about science is that, you're constantly evolving and learning, and that curiosity is so inherent in kids. Like, I think kids are natural scientists in that they're always really curious about the world around them. So it was really cool because she was just like, I'm a scientist, and I'm just like, yes, you're already on your way, you're already doing it. So I think that was really, important. And those kids had never, they never met a scientist whose lab was in the field. And I talked a little bit about this on the channel before, but the idea in the public consciousness that, a scientist is like a chemist or like biomed or something. Like you're in a lab coat with, vials, And I think a lot of it comes from our media portrayal. You think of like the mad scientist in the lab of like bubbling things and, all those things. And not to say that, those fields aren't amazing and necessary and that they should be represented, but I think even if they're incorrectly represented, which I think they are in media, they're more represented than other fields. So being able to be like, yeah, I'm a scientist, but my lab is the field. My lab is outside, or my lab is my office desk. I'm analyzing data at my desk. I think that's really cool because then they can kind of see like, oh, wait, maybe there's branches of science that I never considered, because I thought science was only one thing. And also to kind of show them that, scientists come in all shapes and colors and sizes, and that they're all valid, and that no matter what your background is, or, what you look like, or, where you're from, if you're really interested in science, you can work at it and make a career out of it. Which I think is a really powerful message to give to kids. And sometimes you get questions that are like completely off the wall. So I had two that were pretty funny, and one was like, why do fish die so fast? Like, why don't they live very long? And I'm not an ichthyologist, but like I tried, and I was basically like, well, goldfish often do live quite a long time, and they die early because, they're not healthy or the situation is not good for them. But there are fish that live a very long time, and then I cited, like, the Greenland shark that lives more than 200 years. It's, like, one of the oldest living, like, aquatic animals on the planet. So I was just like, the shark lives a long time. So it kind of depends. And that completely blew their mind, and then they were all about, like, Greenland sharks, which I think was really cool. So that was a really interesting one. Another question that I got was, I was talking about my work, like trying to reduce conflict between African predators like lions and jackals and things like that and livestock. So they were like, so you worked around goats? And I'm like, yeah, like I know goats, okay. There's a lot of goats where I've worked. And then she asked, can you turn someone who doesn't like the environment into a goat? And I was just like, not at this time, but good question. So it's really great, and I recommend it because it's quick. It's only 30 minutes of your time and maybe a couple emails back and forth. You're giving back to people who may, from talking to them, be inspired to, become a scientist, which is a huge impact on the world and helps increase diversity in the field. And also, it's good for you. Like, I honestly think that, we should all be put before a tribunal of, like, 9-year-olds, and having to explain your science in a way that kids can understand, not talking down to them, but making sure that you're not using field-specific jargon, as it's not appropriate in that situation, was really important because, like, if I was saying something and they didn't get it, they'd be like, what's that? And then that would force me to be like, oh, okay, like, I need to word it in a way that's, makes sense. Like, I think one of the hardest questions I got was, where does gravity come from? Which isn't my field, but, like, it's just a basic science question. So I answered it, but, like, in this very straightforward way that had to literally, like, I wanted to say, like, celestial bodies or something, but then I was just like, no, like, I need to word it in a way that makes more sense. So yeah, definitely do it. I'm going to drop the link down below the video, so check it out. And next week I'm going to be interviewing Salida Guy. I believe that's how I pronounce her name, but I'm going to check. Who is an amazing researcher who looks at the interface between bats and how bats can sometimes, it looks like they carry viruses, or it seems like they carry viruses, but they don't get sick themselves, and how are they able to do that? And all the cool things about bats, who are, quite misunderstood creatures. So I'm really looking forward to having her on the channel. And we're going to have some more interviews lined up. It's going to slow down a little bit for the holidays, and then pick back up again. So we're going to look forward to having you as well in the new year. So, and I hope you like the new background. It's the South African flag. I kind of felt like I needed it because I was feeling a little homesick for Cape Town, where I did my master's degree. So I was just like, South African flag. I think it's a fun background. So definitely subscribe if you're interested in getting more content like this. And signing off, I'm Gabi from Breaking Bio, the YouTube channel that talks about diversity issues in conservation and in STEM. And I wish you guys a fantastic rest of your weekend, and see you soon. Bye.